There you go. I guess I better shut up.
Yeah, well, most of our members, I think, or Larry can correct me, but I think most of our members are in the general Portland area, and they often talk about, well, that's all the way on the west side of town. Like, oh yeah, okay, fine. So
All I'll say,
I'm out on the coast.
what is considered the Portland metro area?
I haven't a clue.
Oh, okay. Because you know, if you talk about like the San Francisco Bay Area, I mean, my God, it's grown so big now. You can go south of San Jose all the way to Gilroy, and you can go north as far as Santa Rosa, and now you're talking easily a 2-hour drive or more.
Well, there's more cows between me and Portland than there are people.
Which is fine.
2 laptops and 2 operators and 4 microphones, and we're trying to keep all this sane. So Julie, you'll see on the screen, is as a co-host. Julie is going to mute anybody whose microphone gets out of whack, but she's not going to mute me, or she's not going to mute Bland. And Julie, the way this works is I'm on a wireless microphone into Bland's computer. So that all the audio is being fed into that, and so the recording is being done on the studio computer, and that will be what will get posted on the Guild website after the meeting. So welcome to the monthly meeting. I will just walk through a few announcements.
So Larry, I've got the
we're waiting for Bland to figure out what happened with his screen.
Yeah, I've got the computer
it's still
screen
on the Zoom. I still see it, so it's still there.
Larry, can you hear me?
Next month's program is Mary May. It's on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday. We figured that people probably didn't want to spend Valentine's Day with the Carvers Guild, so we postponed it 2 days later. It'll be on Thursday the 16th. And this is a prelude to Mary coming in May. Mary is a big deal. She's a big deal in the United States. She's a big deal for us. She was here right before the pandemic, and she'll be teaching 2 major classes, I would call it a minor group class, and then she'll be the evening speaker as well for the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers, which will also make the May meeting. We have an opportunity to hone what she teaches. And so Heidi, is the class coordinator, has put out a request to fill out a survey for what projects to teach as part of the 2 classes. There's a kind of a beginner, intermediate oriented class, and then there's an intermediate, more advanced class. And those are the ones we're trying to pin down, because we have some options, so we want to maximize that. March is a program with 2 different speakers. Scott Lang from California will spend an hour talking about making your own knife out of a jigsaw blade. And then Jim Bergeron will join us via video and live from Astoria on making an ads. And he's been doing this for 25 years. And so both of those are under the rubric of making your own tools. April hasn't been scheduled yet, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to do a tour of a major carving studio in either Salem or Albany around the carousel carving studios. They're just major operations. Last newsletter had a long article on the backgrounds of carousels. And when you think about spending 4 years with 10 to 15 people to carve one animal, and another year of a group of people to paint it, you realize these are pretty substantial operations. So the carving studios are just amazing things. We'll take off in June and July. August will be a picnic, and then we'll resume again in September. We ask you to register for the programs, the free. The reason is that we notify you afterwards in case there are any handouts. You get a chance to get the email link to them, and also a link for when the program is actually posted up later on. We have this coming weekend is the Coastal Carver Show, and I encourage you, if you haven't been, to consider taking a one-day trip to Lincoln City. It's 10 to 5 on Saturday or 10 to 5 on Sunday. You can go both days if you want. This is a restart during the pandemic, obviously. It's one of 3 major shows, carving shows in Oregon, and that's one of them. I encourage you to go. You'll get to see a lot of examples of what people are doing, meet people, and there are about, I think, 4 or 5 little classes of an hour, hour and a half long. And those are all listed on page 4 of the last newsletter. Our major show is not a carving show per se, but it's the gathering of the guild at the last weekend in April. We went last year and it was a hoot. It was a big deal. There's over 10,000 people that show up, free admission to the 6 different guilds that display their things, including woodworkers and carvers. We have a 2-part booth there. One of them is a store where carvers can sell their things. The other is a demonstration area where people can see what's going on. And we need carvers who have things to sell things, because buyers go to that show. And so if you're interested in selling things little or big, intermediate, let me know. We're on a recruiting stages to do that. We will sell comfort birds like we did last year at about $20 each. And we'll use that both to promote the program for comfort birds, which is a major community project for us, as well as to make some money to offset the cost of being at the show. So some people are working how to make them. If you want to participate in making more birds or turtles or other things, just let me know. Julie, who you see on the screen, is leading the effort to for the bird carving programs with help from a number of people. And as far as we can tell, there's an infinite need for these things. And so we've also been working with the carving with the CNC SIG to make them in a little bit more production mode. So they're going to try to make 500 using CNC repetition. And so far that process looks like
him,
it's
but they're all little pictures.
Tonight's program is on tool storage. I call it Tool Storage Best Practices. It's a roundtable, which means there's not one presenter. There's a series of presenters. I've asked Ruth Warbington to focus a bit on the tool roll side of this equation. But there's a lot of other examples and photos I've been collecting over the last 6 months for different kinds of solutions. And I've organized a PowerPoint presentation on an outline of tool rolls, which making storage solutions out of cloth-ish kind of things. Another solution for making things out of wood. Another one making out of plastic. And then you'll look at different solutions that people have sent in for photos. And then there'll be a few show and tell things here. Ruth and I will start it off. And then just to alert those of you in the audience that have slides, as I show the slides, I'll call on you to talk about them. We're going to deal with, after tool rolls, we'll spend a little bit of time, but not much, on rotary tool storage. And Joe Jodorowsky, I have the one picture of your solution. And then we're going to move into plastic-based solutions. There'll be Jerry Boone, Heidi, Jason, if he's here, myself, for the tool storage area. And then for the examples, we got Joe Jodorowsky again, Joe Lyons, Tom Rich, Jim Spitzer. Julie, I put yours in, and then Tom Sipe. We'll end it, Tom, with yours, because I included most of the slides that you sent. Okay. So there we are. I'm going to move to, I guess the premise for tonight's conversation is that there are about 20 different styles of carving, and you might be interested in totem poles or golf balls or relief carving or chip carving or carving in the round, all different kinds of styles. But what unites us are tools acquisition, tool sharpening, tool storage. And so tonight is kind of one of these generic programs. There are lots of solutions, and I think you'll discover, if you haven't already, that they're very personal choices, that what works for somebody else might not work for you. So we're going to look at tool rolls, and I'm going to prime the pump by showing some examples of different kinds, and then Ruth's going to talk about her practice and experience for that. The Guild of Oregon Woodworkers has a rewards program, if you will, of being able to get Am I zoomed? Okay. So this is a Guild of Oregon Woodworkers Carhartt tool roll. It's kind of a generic one for carpenter chisels and rulers and those kind of things. It's got a pouch at the end for little odds and ends kind of thing. And
Larry,
it's got
you're
variable
not
size
spotlighted.
pockets, which is good news, bad news. The pockets are deep. It's made out of canvas. It's durable. It rolls up.
Hey Larry,
And
we can't see your
sturdy
tool
and
rolls.
Carharttish kind of things with leather straps. It's going to last a long time. So that's one solution.
Larry,
Diana
can you
Larrabee, in one
stop
of
for
her
a sec?
classes, when Chuck
I
Ryder
don't
was
Larry,
I don't think he
fell
can
in
hear
love with
us.
this bucket boss
I think
tool
you're right.
roll.
Yeah.
It looks very similar, but it's not. And what you discover is that some of the pockets are very short. It's got some elastic in the middle for pencils and things that might
Everybody go to
work. But
gallery
what I found is
view and
that,
then you'll be able to
the
see
pockets
him.
just aren't
Don't go to
deep.
speaker view.
and so the tools kind of flop around. It's
Thank you.
durable, it's sturdy, it's got the same, looks kind of like maybe Carhartt bought the bucket boss or vice versa. Looks very similar. And I've seen solutions where there are specialty carver rolls that have actually a zippered pocket, which I thought was very clever. I don't know who makes those, but from those of you or us that can manufacture or sew our own things, this becomes a way to kind of take loose end kind of things and keeping them from rolling around. So what would that be? Erasers, maybe a X-Acto knife, maybe a pin vise, those kind of things. This is Dennis Mims is one of the best carvers I've ever met in Oregon. He passed away a couple of years ago. His widow, Delilah, sold a bunch of things. We sold them at the picnic last year. This was Dennis's tool roll. And these are his remainder tools of knives. So I'm keeping these together in the concept of memorial sets. So this is Dennis Mims' antler-based handle for a crooked knife, which is pretty cool. And he's got some other odds and ends, but it's pretty fancy cloth, right? There's nothing magic about that other than it's, I think, aesthetically interesting. And from a thematic, he wasn't a Northwest Indigenous coastal carver, but is reminiscent of Pendleton Woolen Mills kind of things, kind of a velvety thing. I think it's I like it, but I like it primarily because it's belonged to Dennis and now it's mine. I bought the tools; they didn't get done. Those we bought those. This tool roll came out of an estate that the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers bought from a guy in Redmond, and he just had loose tools. And this has got some nice characteristics. It's got deep enough pockets. But it's kind of like it's the one example that I know of that's got kind of like wax canvas. And as I looked around for who has the most expensive tool rolls in the United States, you discover Texas Heritage something, right? $97, $92 on up to $116, right? You want your name personalized and embossed in your logo, and rivets. They're really quite an interesting, durable set of solutions. What I found is that there's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's like 14 slots. One little skinny one because you can't use it. So maybe 12 to 14. So at some point, if you have a few tools, this is lightweight canvas. it's nice. It's got riveted ties. It's got a leather stop. But when Mary May was here at the October of 2019, I asked her what she thought, what was her best favorite tool roll, and turns out someone had given her one of the Texas ones. She didn't buy it, right? I'm not sure anybody ever buys that stuff, but they're good. My wife, when I first got started, I found a book, I found a pattern. So she for Christmas, she made this behemoth, and it's made out of, I'm not sure it's a denim. Okay. The thing I like about it a lot is it's got the flap on it. And I think Ruth will end up talking about that. It's got a lot of rolls. It's got a lot of slots. I mean, I put a grommet in the end of it for sturdiness. Went down to Oregon leather and got some leather tongs. I haven't cut them off because I kind of like the long sides of that. So I park a lot of tools in that. And because my wife made it, I love it. Right? So that's another one. This came out of a book. I can't remember what the carving book was that had that pattern, but there are a number of carving books that we have. Linda Howarth is the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers newsletter. She was a carver and a woodworker and an artist and a seamstress. She sold a bunch of tools and I went over and bought them. So she had this tool roll and I don't know where it came from. It's a nice tool roll. It's the same, it feels like denim again. It's got a little strap on it. It's got some cords on it that make it nice. The thing I've been doing is I've been putting blue tape on it and a place for everything and everything in a place. So now I know where things go. And if I decide to rearrange it, I can just put another piece of blue tape on it or I rip it off. And I found that to be a useful thing. So thank you, Linda, for that one. That's just another example. These, Ruth, you'll talk about bungee cord kind of things. When we first got started, when Chuck moved here, Chuck Reinhardt is our 92-year-old carving instructor, pointed us to Master Carver in Florida, a mail order operation that had affordable tools. Besides that, they make wood burning sets and wood burning tips, and they sell this particular carving roll that because the guild ended up with about 300 tools. We had a lot of them. This is a 30 pocket tool roll made out of denim again. It's sturdy enough. The little hole that they put in always wore out, so I replaced it with the grommet. I replaced their shoestrings that wore out pretty quickly with pieces of leather. And again, I use this is my main tool roll. So I organized everything. So if I'm missing a tool at the end of the day, I can go by, I can find it and figure out where it goes. What I don't like about it is what my wife sewed and what Ruth will talk about. It doesn't have flaps, so that if I'm not careful, one of these things come out, right? So the sense of all this, the tool roll, the tool hole, tool storage issue, to me is about three different modes. You store it, you transport it, and you use it. And we'll talk about all three of those modes. So if I'm parking these things somewhere, I'm storing them. I don't have any silica things to keep them from rusting, right? But that's an issue, but I can keep them, I keep them in a pretty climate controlled environment. So I'm not so worried about that. But a lot of people only carve at home. And if you're only carving at home, you're really not transporting things. But if you're carving once a week and going somewhere once a week, then you have to roll them up, take them somewhere, unroll them up and deal with that, right? And then if you have 50 tools, you're not going to put them all on the bench. So then how you pick and store temporary ones. And so Jim Spitzer and Tom Rich will show examples of solutions that they've evolved. And Jim, I have your photo in the slide set. Okay. So that's kind of a prelude. And Ruth, you'll put your microphone up and we'll get started. Ruth made a comment. Ruth is multifaceted. Those of you that know her know that she's a precision woodworker, and she's a leader of the Women's SIG, and she does kumiko, and she does all kinds of interesting stuff. But she's also a carver and a seamstress, and she does all kinds of stuff. So during the pandemic, she said, I fiddle with this topic area. So I said, would you be willing to talk? And she said, of course. So I will get my stuff out of the way and move.
All right. Well, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think the pattern that your wife used was the same place I started with the first tool roll I made. And I made tool rolls because I hate spending money and I like making things. So I kind of enjoyed making the tool rolls. So this is very similar to what that one that you have, but there are a lot of different pieces to it. So as I kind of made more and more tool rolls, I kept kind of trying some different things to simplify the process and to make it better. And this one, I don't really need to roll it out because I'll roll out some of the other ones. But what I found from it is the lightweight material I used for it is probably a little bit too light. So kind of the denim, the medium weight denim is really kind of. The other thing, if you're thinking about making your own, is kind of double layering, either having a pretty sturdy outside layer or maybe having multiple layers. That pattern, and actually this pattern, has multiple layers on the backing of it, you know, kind of where the tools sit. And some of the other ones, as I simplified it, I went away from that. That was my first one. This one was the second one. And I think this is pretty good. The thing that I'll kind of do it now where you can see it is I early on decided didn't want to tie it. And so I came up with this with two bungees cords that I could tighten, but that, you know, I take it off and unroll it. And then when I put it back together again, I just wrap that around it, both of them, and it's secured. I don't have to kind of get the ties and tie them on. It's easy on, easy off. And the tightening system, the snugging system, when these little toggles, and by the way, a lot of these come off my Columbia sportswear outfits when I don't need to cinch in the waist. So all that cord comes out and all those little doohickeys come out and they go into my stash and I got to figure out where I can use them. But the particular kind of little toggles is ones that have a little hole around the outside that can be fastened to something. There's a little bit of ribbon essentially that goes around the outside of the toggle that's captured, that ribbon then can be sewed on. So when I pull this loop over, I can pull on the end and tighten it because the toggle is fastened to the edge. And that's a handy thing. I didn't have a toggle that would take a ribbon like that. This one is kind of more standard one. It doesn't have little places to catch a ribbon, so you couldn't do it. So it's just through little sleeves. And then the problem with that is you can't really do that cool thing where you can sort of tighten it. Other than that, this is probably what I think is good. And most of these I've kind of settled on a size that's about like this. It's about 24 inches long because I'm usually trying to work at my bench and roll the tools out. I don't work out of the tool roll, but I have more tools, have several rolls. And so finding the right tool, I have to kind of put this next to it. And I don't want it to be so long. You can't access any of the tools until it's rolled all the way out. So that's a consideration. It's how long. You might want to store 30 or 40 tools, but having one long roll gets to be a problem. If it's short enough, you can. Anyway, so that's sort of a length thing. The flaps, being sort of a conscientious or worried about things happening. I was worried about the tools poking somebody or sliding out. So that's why I wanted to add the flaps. So I like that design. The other nice thing that a flap does is as you roll up the tools, they aren't going to be bumping into each other. The flap kind of, protects them as you're rolling it up. So I think that's really a good thing. When you make your own, which is basic sewing. So you don't have to be a very good sewer. You can customize the sort of the tool slots. And I've ended up with 2.5-inch wide slots, and that nests the tools really well so that it's got enough room for the handles to go into the pocket, the 2.5 wide pocket, and that it also kind of spaces them out across, as you then pile them all up. 2.5 inches on the bottom, offset 2.5 inches on the top, so they kind of nest. And that works pretty well. But if you've got some oddball tools, sometimes I leave a pocket on the end really wide that you could put something really fat in, or you could stuff in a carving glove. So actually, a carving glove, you often just lay it on top and roll it in. If you make your own, it's nice to have some slop at each end as you start rolling it up, so you don't have any tools sticking out the edge. When you start to roll, things kind of starts shifting a little bit. You don't want it shifting out. So having a little extra width at the beginning as you start to roll it up, and then particularly at the end, having 1.5 inches at the end or so, so you can hang on to the edge of the roll and not have a tool right there, like not running the tools all the way to the final edge. If they're there, they'll end up sort of sliding and poking out the side. And this fabric is from the fabric store, and it's kind of a medium weight denim. It's not as heavy as Levi's or jeans, but there's also really lightweight denims, which I used for the pockets and some of the other ones. So this is a pretty nice weight, and this one does have a liner on it. The way I made the pockets, it's a thin fabric, which happens to be an upholstery of fabric called Sunbrella that's supposed to be sun resistant outside, and it's a partially synthetic. I don't know how much cotton and how much whatever else it has in it, but it's not all cotton, and it's pretty thin and it's pretty stiff, and it just kind of works out well. So that there's not a lot of bulk in the pockets. The pockets don't need to be very substantial. When I'm just putting the handles in, I'm not putting the blades in, I'm just putting the handles. So it's a good kind of a fabric to use for that. Any questions about that? 4.5 inches.
So repeat the question too.
Oh yeah, sorry. What's the depth of the pockets? So they're 4.5 inches here, and the total width is 11 3/4. And that just kind of works out, for these standard, whatever they are, 11-inch, or maybe they're 10.5-inch tools. Just seems like just fits, it gives them some extra room at the end. You can kind of see, you definitely lose distance. You have to make it at least 1 inch longer than you want the tool to lay, because you lose distance when you put the tool in, and it shortens it up because it's pulling the fabric, and it's making it shorter once you put tools in. So it's 11 3/4 high, and it's about 22, 24 inches long.
Are those red things edge
So
protectors?
Yeah, those are a couple things from Woodcraft, and they're chisel protectors, and they're really handy because they're pretty inexpensive, especially when they go on sale. And I tried to make some leather ones, and sometimes your tools come with them, but anyway, those are pretty handy, and I have them on some very wide pointy things.
Thank you.
So one other one I want to show. During the pandemic, I made a whole bunch of tool rolls because I needed another one. And then I had some fabric that was cut off from the bottom of my daughter's curtains. They were too long. So I had all this fabric that seemed like about the right amount. So I decided that was a good excuse to try tie dyeing and then to make tool rolls. Kind of that's the way my mind works. So I made a bunch like this. And this is about the simplest design, where it's got one piece of fabric that's the backing, and then the pockets are separate and sewed on pocket panels. There's no extra padding in the back. So, they're kind of bony. When I feel the tools, I kind of like that I like that previous one that had this fabric, one layer of it in the back as well. Just, it doesn't add very much bulk, but it feels more protective when you've got really pointy tools in there. Okay, but otherwise else.
Have
pretty
you
much the
ever
same.
found a tool that didn't fit in one of the rolls?
Yeah, I actually made some longer, I don't have any carving tools that don't fit, but I have some chisels that are longer. And so I made a chisel roll, which actually doesn't have my chisels in it right now very much. That's longer. You know, so these are 11 and a half of the chisel roll. It's not much, it didn't take much longer. I can't remember what I made it. I made it just a 13 and a half instead of 12. But otherwise I made it all the same. And so there's not really anything, it's just identical construction. One thing I used, I thought I'd never used this for a sewing project before, but I made a story stick for these projects, and it was so handy because when you're laying out all those pockets and everything, it's a pain to measure it out. So having those tick marks, you know, I could lay it down there. I can lay it down. I go, here's where I cut my fabric. I've got a line to cut the fabric. It shows me how far the fabric comes in, where the hem is, where the pocket area is going to start, where all the pockets, I'm going to mark the seam lines for the pockets. Then on the other side, you know, it's got the height, how tall is it going to be, and where are those pockets going to be located? You know, how big are the pockets and how big is the gap? And so that's been really handy. Yep.
Repeat
I
the
did.
question. Repeat the question.
Did I build in the seam allowances on a story stick? Yeah, I did. I kind of included those. And if anybody wants to make it, I didn't put all the directions in, but I did kind of translate the measurements on here onto something, if somebody wants that. Yeah, you can make a copy.
We'll have that as a handout
Yeah, we can.
on the website afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So here's kind of the, is this going the right direction? Should I turn the other way, or should I?
Turn it over.
Oh,
There
you
we
can't
go.
read
Here.
upside down. This is just kind of the 17 pockets, 11 3/4 high, 24 inches wide. Less wide when it loses about 2 or 3 inches once you pile the tools in it. They make it shrink. So in terms of rolling it out on your bench, if you have a bench space, you might want to think about how long you want to make it. Good fabric is a medium weight denim or a lightweight canvas. The pocket material is usually lighter. Some of these I used a lightweight denim for the pockets, and that worked great at the fabric store. Then just for fun, I wanted to show you a couple other things that I did. Actually, this preceded my carving tool rolls. And this is when I took an old director's chair of sun-drenched, sun-bleached canvas to make a little chisel roll. This is the seat. This was the back. So anyway, and sometimes when you take something that's was something else, like this already had all the edges bound. You know, I didn't have to do any of that. And that's actually kind of time consuming, and actually one of the trickier parts is taking all the edges and folding them over and doing all those things. And in this one, I didn't even sew the bottom of the pocket. I just kind of made a pocket. And I sewed the top and the edge. Turns out you don't really need all this Velcro thing. You know, you don't really need that. So my first one had a little Velcro on it, and the later ones didn't. And one last thing for fun is the blue jeans. This is kind of a small one, but this is the leg of my husband's work pants that finally he decided were worn out. And I wanted a graduated thing. So here's, you know, it gets wider as it goes up to your thigh. So here's the seam. I kept the seams again. And here's the lightweight denim for the pockets. And I kept the outdoor seams. Took a belt loop and stuck it over there. So you can find some, you know, turns out the neighbor kid that sells used blue jeans, they're not the best vintage of blue jeans. Oh, Woodcraft. Oh, I don't know. I didn't see him. What did I? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, I see. David Hill is one of them. So anyway, that's what I got. Any questions? And if anybody wants to borrow the, take measurements of the story stick or get an explanation, email me and I can help you walk through if you've got questions about, if you want to make your own.
Do you have any suggestions for palm
Let
tools?
me ask in the
Palm
people that are
tools?
here in the studio.
I don't have any, I haven't done any, so I can't help on that.
We'll have some palm tool solutions later.
All right, hold on.
Okay.
Can I keep this space down here? Do I need to clear this out?
Any questions here from anybody? Would you do anything differently?
I like it.
Yeah.
The only tricky part is some of the little details on the toggles and things like that. I kept kind of trying different things, and the toggle should flop around a little bit to
Yeah.
work well. I don't want to, doesn't want to be snugged down tight. Wants to be floppy.
That's great. Blaine, I'm going to have you keep the camera up here. 'Cause Marty, I'm going to have you go in a moment. It's in a moment. But let's put a wrap on this tool roll thing. Is there any, I can't see everybody on my screen now, so I won't be able to interact. But if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question, and then Bland would need to hear it, hear from anybody. Maybe you can enable the speaker up here. Are there any, if you have anything to share on your own personal experience about tool rolls? Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, I think a couple of thoughts. I don't have the tool roll. I use tool rolls. I bought them for tools. Wood is good tools rolls anyway, and they work very well, and they're lightweight down the lightweight canvas anyway. They don't have flaps on the outside. Okay, so what I've done for many years is I just put an old towel on the inside and roll it up, and it still protects the blaze. But then I'm a little bit ultra conservative on the blaze because I spend a lot of time sharpening the damn things. So I use corks, and I found out that synthetic corks last longer than natural oak cork oak corks. And then I also use the chisel protectors. And then for things that don't fit any of those, I use plastic tubing. And you can crunch it down and you can put all sorts of different types of blades in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, a couple of thoughts on protecting blades.
Yeah. Okay. My microphone hopefully is near, but Steve was talking about his own experience putting a towel inside a tool roll in order to provide the protection, and then using synthetic corks for the edge protectors, as well as commercial versions, those kind of things, and plastic tubing. So, yeah, so you buy them by the foot kind of thing, and you cut them off, never cut them off too short, right? Okay. Never happens to me. Okay, well, thanks. I don't see any other questions coming through. Marty Lawrence is here in the studio, and Marty, I put your things over here.
Great.
Brought in her traveling toolkit. She has to leave a little bit. She has to leave early. So I'm going to kind of rearrange the order dynamically and have
Try and keep it
her
brief.
talk about that.
I'll be brief. How's that? Good? Okay. Pockets are good. Some of you know that I've been carving for a while in Maine in the winter, outside on a porch where it's cold. And also when it warms up, water condenses on cold things. So when I started collecting some tools, I was very concerned about corrosion. So I got these waterproof boxes to put my tools in. And when I only had about 5 or 6, it was not a big deal carrying them around. This is a piece of corrosion-proof paper. You can get it on Amazon. But what I ended up doing is getting some of this foam, getting a foam knife, which are cheap at Amazon, and just carving these grooves in there so that I could rest my tools inside the box like that. So I have more corrosion proof stuff in there, all these do not eat things from your potatoes and so on sit in there, and I have the rubber bands to keep the tools from slipping around. Now that I'm not going anywhere, I have tool rolls at home, but for some of the things I don't use very often, they're there. I have one small tool roll for the stuff that I'm going to use for one project and a big tool roll for the other stuff. And this is when I was organizing things, this holds some other stuff that's labeled on the sand. That's it.
And where do you store your mallet?
I have another box that has my rifflers because they're a different dimension. They don't really fit in here. So I carved that out and the mallets go in there along with my stones, which are wrapped in leather. That's it.
Thank you, Marty. Are there any questions for Marty, locally or remotely?
Yeah, it's made it back and forth across the country twice and up and back to Anacortes.
Yeah, so she was also carving on a boat in Anacortes and a member here and on the board and on the membership chairman until she wasn't. And when she was traveling. So thank you.
Can I ask a question? This is Gary.
I have a spotlight in my screen.
What's your question, Gary?
Gary, go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, the tool rolls situation, especially
I don't hear it.
when I was trying to send you a chat, I couldn't get it done.
Hang
So,
on a minute, Gary.
Oh.
Go
so
ahead.
when you were showing all the tool rolls, Larry, you had a lot of them, and I noticed a lot of people have a lot of them. I have some too. The big question is, now that you got all those tool rolls, how do you find the tool you want when you want it?
I can tell you, I have a Bluetooth locator on every single tool.
What?
I can tell you, let me just tell you what I do. What I showed is actually a combination of two different things. The Oregon Carvers Guild, and the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers and Larry Wade all have tools, and I keep an Excel spreadsheet that itemizes everything. And the reason is, those of you in the audience that know about the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers estate sales, you have a moment to decide whether you want to buy something or not, or you go to a different estate sale. So one way I do it is I print out an Excel spreadsheet, right? And I keep track of it. And it mainly is an issue of sweep and size. But I also keep track of palm tools, micro tools, long handle tools, what I got, where I got it, what I paid for it, what condition it was in, all that stuff, right? So it becomes an inventory. Primarily, I started this because the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers Board of Directors authorized the carving SIG to spend $2,000 to buy the estate of Michael Gedrose from Redmond, Oregon, who passed away. And so that inventory is now an asset database. A year later, another guy walked in and we ended up spending $500 and bought 50 tools from him, so $10 a piece. Those came from Leo Lambo. Leo Lambo was one of the notable carvers in Oregon. Raised in Romania, migrated to Germany, got trapped in the World War, got a prisoner of war, got out of that. He learned carving in Paris, moved to Portland in 1950. Professional carver, had all these tools he built up. Worked on the inner northeast side. His tool shed got broken into, they all got stolen. So in 1970, he bought new tools. So that's what the Guild bought, right? Brand new, basically used, well cared for, Swiss made. That inventory is this thing, and we have another solution for that. But the tool rolls, the only reason I say that is I have a little key tag called TR2, tool roll 2, right? I hate to say that, right? But the reality is when you start getting all this stuff, you got to kind of keep track of it. And if anybody wants to be a tool librarian, please let me know, because we have a lot of tools being donated and we're trying to get them out into the hands of people to borrow, to try. We want you to go buy stuff, right? You can buy stuff from Woodcraft, you can buy it from Woodcrafters, you can buy it from Rockler, you can buy it from estate sales or Tools for Working Wood or EVA, right? So you make your own choices, but our goal with the tool library is two things. We want to encourage beginners to not have to buy stuff to see if they like carving. I didn't know if I would like carving. A lot of you don't know. Other times you're doing a project and you need a tool one time for 1 week. So you're going to go out and spend $50 or not. So we try to make it possible for those kind of specialty tools to do it. All of that ends up on a piece of paper in a tool roll with a tag so you can kind of find out which tool roll. And blue tape. Okay. Okay, we're going to switch gears. There are not, some of us do power carving with rotary tools and other kind of tools. And some of us in the carving realm do wood burning. And so if you are serious and start accumulating burrs and cutters for Fordhams or Dremels or micromotor systems, you end up realizing you not only can get dozens of them, and you can get hundreds of them. So the issues of storing rotary bits becomes an issue. And Joe Jodorowsky, I'm going to call on you in just a second. But there are three solutions that are, I forgot one actually. So the classic way to store Dremels and Fordhams and rotary things, rotary cutters and sanders, is in a tray. I mean, it's a lazy Susan with a handy thing in the middle for storing wrenches and those kind of things. So that's the commercial version. I was over at Joe's house, and Joe, let's see, I'm going to make sure let me skip forward. So Joe, this is your solution. Do you want to unmute yourself and just make any comments about if you built it, if you bought it,
I think I'm unmuted. Am I?
You're unmuted. Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. It's a pretty simple solution. I bought this eons ago, and you know, it works. What can I say? Transportable? No, but
So it's all full. What are you going to do when you get the next one?
oh, I have other bit containers also. This is a small part. Like you, I am an estate sale junkie, and I run into stuff. I have one of those gray things that spins. I run into deals that I just can't pass up. Sometimes I really don't need it, but I might run into somebody who might. So it goes home.
And there's not a speck of dust on any of those. Does your wife clean them for you?
No,
Your dog lick them?
I have an ultrasonic that I put them in every so often.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
So there's obviously a mix of burrs and cutters and sanders and finishing devices and collets that end up kind of being there. This next one is from Larry Roberts. Larry Roberts, I coined the phrase called notable carvers of Oregon. When we started rebuilding the club, I thought there was about 10 to 15 carvers that were either alive or not, that were distinguished in some way, that they were instructors, they were authors, they had produced videos, they did significant amount of carving. That list, I think, is now at least 40 and maybe 50 people long. And Larry Roberts is one of the top names on that list. He lives in Bandon. He's still alive. He's about 80, and he was a shop teacher in Northern California for 30 years, and then he became a professional carver for 30 years. And he donated his book library to our club, 145 books that he's accumulated over 30 years. And he put out an email and said, if anybody wants the books, just come on down and go get them. So I said, surely someone's going to go get them. So I waited. I didn't do anything for 2 or 3 days. I called him up. He didn't know me. I knew him because I met him at the Coastal Carver Show. I said, you know, do you still have the books? He said, yeah. So how would you like to donate? He did. So my wife and I made a 2-day trip down to Bandon, picked them up. They're now being cataloged and inventoried by Ruth Holland, and who's been coached by Ruth Warbington, so that we can mimic the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers Library. So the Carving Club library now has 190 books plus now 145 edition. So we need to figure out how to get these into the hands of people, not just make them interesting boxes in somewhere. But when we were picking them up, he said, would you like these? Would you like these? And these are 250 devices that he organized on this 6-sided carousel. And he's got 2 sides for 1/4-inch things, 2 sides for 1/8-inch things, and 2 sides for 3/32 things. So if you know about the way these rotary tools work, Fordhams are 1/4-inch, Dremels, and a lot of the micromotors are 1/8-inch, and then NSKs and some of the other micromotors are 3/32. So he's got cutters and sanders, and it's on a Lazy Susan, and it's well used, and it's just is there, right? So we'll use some of these, a few of them, to make comfort birds, but we also want to encourage people to, if they want to scratch that itch and think about power carving, this is a way to do that. And we also have in the library at least one Fordham, maybe 2. We have 2 micromotor systems, and we got at least 1 Dremel. So we have options for people to experience these things without going out and just first of all buying them. So these are the 3 solutions for those. But if you're a wood burner, Master Carver in Florida, who made the tool roll that I showed and also sells a lot of different kinds of tools, has a brand called Burn Master, and they make wood burners for that. This is their wood-based solution. Guess what? It looks like a rotary tool thing, but if you have a lot of tips for wood burning, then you have to organize and control all those things. Some of them are handmade, many of them are commercial and purchased. So you end up with that as a kind of a companion solution. Cheryl Ayers is an important carver locally. She's a member of the Capital Carvers in Salem. She lives in, I think, McMinnville. She did a talk in Salem a couple of months ago on introduction to power carving, and this was her kit. I couldn't see, I didn't ask her where she got it, but if you look at it, it's a lidded box with a foam insert that's looked like it's all been pre-drilled and pre-made. She didn't, when I asked her, she didn't know where she got it. Got a handle on it. She's the kind of carver that travels a lot. So when you think about the Larry Roberts carousel as a professional in his shop, that's one solution. But if you're moving your stuff around and doing power carving and workshops and classes, then you need a portable solution. And heaven forbid this tips over and everything falls out. Right? It would never happen to me. So that is the rotary. Does anybody have any experience with other solutions for rotary or a lot of these small storage things? You do, unmute and let us know, or make an observation and chat. You know, Joe's, you can obviously take a piece of plywood and an 1/8" drill until you realize that wood swells and that 8" drill might not actually work. So you might need a 5/32 hole. So you'll figure that out pretty quickly, but you can make your own and evolve it and those kind of things. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go back and spotlight myself. Go to share screen and go back. This next segment is about how do you storing tools with solutions that are made out of wood, right? Where we are mostly wood carvers. Some of us are snow carvers and ice carvers and gourd carvers and food carvers and golf ball carvers, but most of us will carve wood. So we're woodworkers. We can make things out of wood. This is Masa Natani's tool storage system. Masa Natani is a master carver. He's an instructor for us. He's got a class here tomorrow on texturing. He has got another one in 2 weeks on making handles. And you'll notice toward the right-ish center, there's some unique handles. He has evolved this tool handling system, which allows you to drive the tool with the web of your thumb and forefinger and get a lot of power and control. But he stores them in, I would call it a tray with a towel in the middle. And that's his foot in the background. He's sitting down on a low Japanese workbench. He just reaches down and picks them up and does his work. Okay, he's low to the ground. So those of us that are more Western, we tend to stand up. And so we're not going to reach down to the floor to pick that up. And yet all the tools there are at his disposal. And if we had a big workbench, we would have a big tray in the back. And Jim Spitzer and Tom Rich will show the solutions that they've evolved for storing things up at a height that we're used to working with. But that's Masa's solution. And he just carries it around. And you go to his house and his workshop, which is right off of his kitchen. That's what he has on the floor on his workbench. I took a picture. Dennis Miller is a carver in Salem Club, in the Capital Carvers. Capital Carvers Group puts on an annual rendezvous in Silverton, Oregon. Those of you not in Oregon, it's about 20 minutes into the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. It's in a campsite. It's 3 days long, and it's a carving. So Dennis is a teacher. This is the solution that he uses for his palm tools. And there's two things that are notable about this. One is he color codes the handles by dipping them in paint. And if you've ever gone to a carving anything with classes and tools look the same, how do you know that they're yours? So a number of carvers that are more serious, they will end up marking their tools. At one point, I would burn my initials on all my tools, and that was a good deal because I could find them until I wanted to sell it. And then I kind of thought about that's not probably what I'm going to do in the future. But he marks them. What's not quite so obvious, and I'm not sure it shows up on the screen, on the right-hand side, there's four slots. They're all hinged. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of pick those out. There's a hinge with a clasp. And so this whole device is an accordion style that collapses into what you see here, but it can also unfold on the hinges on the opposite sides of the corners. And so he can then stand these things up in front of him and get access to the tools. And Dennis is a serious carver. He's one of the leaders of the Salem Carousel Carving Project. He doesn't use these tools there, but I thought it was an interesting solution out of wood. Bob Fresh is someone who I don't know well. Bob's been showing up at the Carving Special Interest Group at the daytime one that we hold at Woodcraft. The evening one is here at the studio. These are all the same caddy. So these pictures were taken by one of the members that were there, and it's four-sided. So he's got palm tools around the ledge, and you can see the photo on the bottom right-hand corner is probably the most instructive. You can see the four sides, you can see the handle, and he's got, if you will, an open tray in the middle for the paraphernalia things. I'm not sure, I'm guessing sharpening. What I would put in there would be a glove and a sharpening thing and a pencil and a ruler and Band-Aids, liquid Band-Aids and regular Band-Aids. What the center top picture has a drawer. No, the upper right shows the drawer built into the base of this. And I think what he did is he actually built the caddy first, and then he added on the drawer system later on. And that became another way to organize some of his things. And you'll see variations of these things. And this is always the case of, I didn't ask him, when you get your next tool, where are you going to put it, right? where does the spare space come from? So that was, I thought that was a useful one. Max Sutter built 3 of they're on Lazy Susans. He built these probably 40 years ago. Max Sutter was one of the 4 co-founders of the Carving Club in 1973, sorry. In February 1973, the Western Woodcarvers Association, which is our predecessor name, was formed. Mac was one of those 4. He taught carving for 40 years. He sometimes taught 4 classes a week. He taught it at the Carving Club. He taught it at the community centers. He taught it at the Portland Community College. He accumulated a lot of tools, and a lot of those have now been donated to the club via his son, John Sutter. John was about ready to throw these carousels out, and he said, "Larry, do you want them?" I said, "Well, I can always throw them out later, but yeah, let's do that." I think John Wheeler's here. I think John ended up with 2 of them. One of them is in our shop. The tools that are stored in here now are actually Jim Hall's palm tools. Those of us that knew Jim and admired him. Jim passed away about a year ago, and his Artie, his wife, widow, donated his tools. They're really well maintained, palm tools, long handle tools, power tools. So there's a whole nother part of the library. But I parked all of as we inventoried that donation, they ended up in this carousel. The thing I don't like about this one is that the handles tend to be, the blades tend to be slightly different lengths, and so they don't all fit. The other real issue is, how do you tell what size to go for? You can't see the blade. So the big debate about palm tool storage or any tool storage is, how do you see the blade, right? So that you spend a lot of time kind of fiddling around. So unless you mark the top of the palm, you don't really get there from here. You'll see some knives sticking up in the back. So knife storage and palm storage are kind of related, but not necessarily. So they're a little bit longer and taller. And then there's flex cut, file, Swiss made, and Drake handle, all in that set, all stored there. And so that is one way to distinguish the tools that I found. And I've appreciated buying used tools and estate sales and varieties of brands, because the handles are different and I can more quickly just find them. But this is a solution. I think what he did is he took 3 pieces of round 3/16 inch plywood, probably drilled all 3 layers at the same time, and then put some separators in between and put them on a Lazy Susan mount. Max Sutter also had he was a practical guy. I think he probably threw this together in a weekend. John was the tools had all been separated. All that was in the basement of the house when they needed to sell it about 2 years ago was this wooden cabinet. It's actually in two parts, but he built these trays, and the trays can hold two tools. And about 125 of those long-handled tools got donated. So they're also in the library. So when I say got a lot of tools stored, we have a lot of tools stored. They're all dull, by the way. So they're good practice for sharpening. And so we have two different people, by the way, that are now taking about 50 tools each, and they are bringing them up to speed. And so, and we got another set that are all being taken care of. It's very primitive drawers. There's nothing magic about that. It's not a very dense solution. You'll see, I think, a very clever solution that Jerry Boone will talk about in a bit, but it works. It's on, in this case, I think I put it on a 4-wheel dolly from Harbor Freight and screwed it to the bottom and just roll it around. And then he actually had a lidded system on the top to store miscellaneous things. So those are the wood-based solutions that I've been able to accumulate. And I'll take a pause here and see if there are any questions and on Spotlight just for a moment. Are there any questions or observations or any systems that you've seen? You'll see some more solutions, by the way, in plastic and whatever, but from wood-based solutions. Okay, so we're going to switch gears again. Okay. So I call this next section plastic-based solutions. And we're probably not going to go out and make things out of plastic, although it's conceivable that we could do that. But Jerry Boone several months ago passed this idea on. And Jerry, I'm going to ask you to unmute and just talk about it. I put the little notes on the right-hand side that are probably not readable, but they'll be useful for later. So let me.
Sure. This started out as a well. Let me give you a little background. I do a lot of traveling. I carve with a group down here in Mesa. We get together a couple of times a week. When I'm home back in Oregon, once a week I often go to Forest Grove to carve with a group. So I'm moving tools back and forth all the time. I had been using tool rolls, but what I discovered is that if you're at a table and you're sharing space with a lot of other people, a lot of times the tool rolls take up so much room, particularly if you're using 2 or 3 of them. So I decided instead to look at a way to go and keep the tools accessible, but to stack them vertically instead. And so what I came up with is this is a plastic tray from Woodcraft. They sell it actually as a sandpaper storage. It's just long enough for it's for full-size tools. It runs about $25. What I did, after I bought the boxes, there's 6 trays in a box. I went over to Harbor Freight, and I think for about 50 cents a piece, you can buy these sort of ceramic magnets. I use double-face tape in the plastic box. Put the magnet down, so it holds the tools, it keeps them from rattling around, keeps them from getting together. When you're actually working at a place, the box probably is maybe 12 inches by 12 inches, so you're not using up an awful lot of real estate. I assembled the tools so I know that I've got my 1s and 2s in the top drawer, 3s and 4s and 5s in the second drawer, 6s and 7s in the third drawer. I've got a collection of the D-size tools from Swiss Made, which are a little shorter tool. I've got one box and I counted in the one box, I've got somewhere right around 70 tools. They're handy. You open up the drawer, you pull the tool out, you use it, put it back in the drawer, close it, and go to the next tool. Keeps them organized, keeps them safe, and it's very, it's highly portable. And it was fairly cheap. You know, I think each box I probably got $35 invested in them.
Jerry, I cropped the picture and cut off the handle. Can you describe how you carry it around?
Yeah, the handle, I went down to the hardware store and I've got it's about 1.5 inches wide aluminum strap that I used my vise at home and made it sort of C-shaped. So it fits around the box front to rear. It extends beyond the front of the box by about 1.5 inches. And I've got a hole drilled in where it extends down, and I put a threaded rod up through there so that I can carry the thing with a handle on the aluminum strap. The threaded rod in the front keeps the drawers from opening while you're carrying them. I hope that explanation made sense.
Yeah. Do the drawers pull out all the way, or do they have stops on them?
They do have stops on them, but you because it is plastic, you can finagle them out, and on occasion I do, but because they're full size tools, they've got the markings on them, so you know you can tell right away by looking at the designation on the tool exactly what you've got. So you don't really need to pull them out. You pull out the drawer and you look for, you know, whatever size and sweep you desire.
Yeah. The only reason what flashed through my mind was having one drawer empty, so that if you were doing a project, you could kind of pick and choose from the tools from each of the drawers, have a working set that might be parked. So that would just be another mode of operation that I would kind of think about. I ended up,
You know,
I was so impressed with this that I went out and bought one, but I haven't actually made it yet. I haven't got the magnets yet. Or the magnets, the magnets keep the blades from bumping into each other.
Right.
Right.
You know, I've found that I carry this box. Actually, I've now got 2 boxes. I gotta confess, you know, I've got, you know, more tools. So I've got 2 boxes, and kind of depending upon what I'm working on, I'll maybe leave one box at home or take both of them. One of the reasons I take all of the tools is, particularly down here in Arizona, we've got and a lot of times, you know, if they're in a project, I'll go and I'll say, look, you know, take this tool that I've got here in my drawer and use this tool. So, you know, I have my own sort of, you know, hour-long lending library that I use. And so I do tend to bring far more tools than I know that I'll use, but I also bring tools that I know that somebody else in a project may find that tool that I've got to be advantageous to what they're doing.
And do you use palm tools and micro tools, and how do you store and transport those?
I've got one drawer that's got some palm tools, and on that one, the magnets I ran front to rear as opposed to just side to side, and I can put the palm tools in there, you know, with handles up against each outside wall. I don't use palm tools very often. Micro tools are just in, you know, I've got a actually for micro tools years ago, I went and I went to an outdoor supply store and bought a couple of shell casing boxes, plastic boxes to hold you know, bullets in, and I found that the micro tools just fit in there absolutely perfect, and so I've got them in a green plastic box, and I just toss that into one of the drawers in in the second box that I've got.
Okay, any questions for Jerry?
You know, for me, the beauty is that I can have all of these tools, but they don't take up very much counter space or table space when I'm working with, you know, when I'm working remotely. That to me is the beauty of it. I you know, just the tools that I've got in one of these boxes would easily take, you know, 2 or 3 tool rolls to be able to accommodate that much.
The old adage we all know is that every horizontal surface always gets filled up. So that here you're using vertical space in order to basically create more horizontal space, but stacking it vertically. Once you get your Bluetooth option for being able to find it, you'll be just fine. Okay. Heidi is not here. Heidi has been carving off and on with me for about 4 or 5 years. She always carries this box with her. This is, I'm not even sure where she got it. I'm not, she might know, but it's sort of her odds and ends collection, not her tools collection. But if you kind of look through the tube of autosol for sharpening and her glove, of course, and some tools on the right-hand side and test carving blocks and some pencils and sharpies and God only knows what, maybe some paint supplies. But this becomes, you'll see another there's a lot of variations of plastic. And I just use this one as, it could be a tackle box, or it could be an art supply box. It could be something from Blix, or it could be something from Costco, or it could be something from an estate sale or Goodwill. Jason, if you're, I don't know that you're here. Jason is a member of the Capitol Woodcarvers. He hangs out with us. I'm just going to scan through. But Jason was at the one of the carving SIG meetings, and had this toolbox in the upper left hand corner. Excuse me just a minute. The upper left hand. This is his go-to case. This is his art supply box, and so it's unlayered, so that when you open it up, you'll see a little U-shaped tray that fits around the handle that you can store things at the top. You notice some glue and looks like a tape measure, pencils and scissors. Then there's a tray underneath it with some tools, and yet another one underneath that. So it's another version of, if you will, layered vertical storage that he finds useful. He's a teacher in a small town outside of Salem, but still about a half hour out, and a member of the club. When Chuck Reinhardt started teaching for us, we needed tools for him. The very first class he taught required people to go out and buy $300 to $400 worth of tools, and it sort of became a limiting factor. So that was the motivation for the board to buy the first estate, so that we could assemble tool kits for students. So the choices were, use your own tools, go buy some, or rent them for us for the class for, I forget, it was like 2 months for $50. So you get sharp tools, you get a complete set, and you get to use them and try it out and see if you like carving. After the second, third class, everybody was renting tools that needed tools. And so they got a chance to try new ones, old ones, antique ones, but they were all sharp. And so they didn't have to worry about that. So you notice the upper, there's 2 boxes. These are art bins. There's the brand ARTBIN, art bin, art boxes. I bought them at Joann's. They're kind of like $10 a piece unless they're on sale for $6. And now they don't stock them at Joann's. So my wife she found some in Texas, mail order. And so the nice thing is I can get 6 tools per box. There's 12 tools in the set, and they become a very compact way of keeping the tools organized, pointing in opposite directions, so metal is not clinking against metal. And then that little ubiquitous spreadsheet at the top, that's where I keep track of the tools, so that anybody taking one of these tools, I know what they've got, And you can see that the one change, I changed out one tool, but you get to see the brand and the size. So there's a mixture of a couple number ones all the way up to V tools and things in between. These are the tools that Chuck needed for his class on classical wood carving. It's slightly different than Mary May's beginner set, but it serves that function. We have 8 of these sets. So the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers Carving SIG owns these tools. 2 of them are parked here in the guild. Ed Ferguson and the Project Build team have used them for following up on some of the Michael Cullen classes. I don't know whose tray this is. I took a snapshot of this thing, kind of a variation of what Heidi had. What's kind of intriguing is that the picture in the middle, this picture is upside down, is Plano, it looks like is the brand name. You can group these things together, put a bungee cord around them, and get some portability going. And that is the set of plastic. So let me just pause here and ask if there are any questions about that. Or any of your own observations, any solutions that you found that you would like to share. And if you can share now, that would be great. If you have a picture, send it in. I'll add it to the PowerPoint and everybody will be able to benefit from that. Okay, we'll keep going. I call this next set of slides are the user examples, and I rattled off some names at the beginning about who's going to be showing up. And Joe, I think you're the first one. It'll be next in a minute. Kelly Stadelman is really an important asset and a notable carver. She had 5 instructors teaching carving in North Plains from late 90s until about 2008. And she's semi-retired and does professional carving now, and is a big supporter of our club. She has 2 major workbenches and with 4 stations on each, and a lot of her work is done with long handle tools. This is her magnet-based solution. So it's a vertical frame with magnets that store her Stubai. And she used to sell Stubai. She fell in love with Stubai when Nora Hall was selling them. I think Kelly actually, at a time when she was starting, there were not a lot of suppliers around, so she ended up becoming a distributor for Stubai. So this is her solution, and this is her personal set on what she does. Those of you that were lucky enough to get into Monica Setzel Phillips class that's coming up in early March, you'll be in the studio and you get a chance to see it. It's just the first class. It's a joy to behold. Joe, I'm going to have you unmute and talk about your setup here.
What I'm pulling drawers out of is a jeweler's cabinet. Years ago, I went into this mom and pop type jewelry store and had them repair a clock. And they were taking instruments out of this huge cabinet. And I thought, I would like a cabinet like this. And I found this on Craigslist. It was painted red at the time. It had a wooden top that was almost disintegrated. 1 drawer was missing and 2 were broken. So I built new drawers. And you can see that there are flat drawers and you put your tools in there and they lay out. You can see exactly what you've got.
Is this where most of your tools are stored, Joe?
No.
Okay.
But the hand carving tools, yes.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
And is there a method to your madness for organizing the drawers?
Well, you can see this top drawer is very wide. And I start at long handled tools number 1. And it continues on into these smaller drawers all the way to 13.
Okay,
So kind of a method.
kind of in sequence.
Yeah.
And there's some other little, Joe, I'm just gonna not ask you to talk about it, but behind your workbench, I noticed another storage with like 1, 2, 3, 4, about 8 drawers. And then another one to the right of that by the window with another 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 drawers. So you have a nice kind of, and then to the left of that toward the ground, it looks like some really wide cabinets with about another 10 drawers, right?
Yeah, that's an architect's file cabinet.
Okay.
And the drawers are about 2 1/4 inches deep. They're for filing the old style blueprints. And I could, if I had 2,000 carving tools, I could put them in there, open a drawer and see exactly what I have. They're great.
Great.
I don't have carving tools in there now. I've got stuff like sharpening stuff, wood burning tools. And
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
sure.
Joe Lyon. Joe, I'm gonna have you get a microphone from. Oh, God. Well, just so people can hear you, or come near so we can pick up mine. You put your slide up next. I'll just have him, I'll have him. Just come on over here. The nice thing about Zoom is we can see pictures. The bad news about Zoom is if you can't hear, it's all over.
No,
So I'll just hold
you just hold it. Good.
This is what I did is I took your Central Island picture
Mhm.
and I cut in
Oh, I see.
some of the others. So just talk about.
Yeah,
your
this
shop.
was, I put this together about 20 some years ago. And, I created a space when I redid my house, for a 20 by 4 or 14 shop. And I was a general contractor and we just happened to be demoing a big house up in the West Hills. And I took all the kitchen cabinets from that to my basement and surrounded. So I've got a lot of cabinets. And I had these 2 lowers that didn't really have a place for. And I thought, well, I'll create a platform, some 3/4 ply with some roller wheels on it, mount those lowers on it, and then had an old drafting table from work and put that on as a top. And it's extremely handy. I use it all the time. And so you can see my rolls laid out on it. I kind of got my odds and ends on those vertically on the wall using 1/4 inch pegboard. And I just doweled, made myself some trays, rests for those gouges. When I mounted on the wall, put some 1/4 inch dowels coming out the back of them so I can put them right on the pegboard. Same thing with those are magnetic strips that are holding the tools vertically. And that was rolled magnetic material. Yeah, and you probably can get better now. I wish it was a little stronger. That's why I doubled. There's 2 strips at each. And I'm sure there's a lot more product out there now that would probably work better, but those are also on wood strips with dowels, so I can move it around if I choose to. 22 years and I haven't moved it. You know how that works. But I've got a lot of counter space, so I keep most of the tools I use every day in the rolls. And then when I'm working at home, I just roll them out and have them right there available. I can see what they are. That rigger's bag, I mean, that's where I carved every week with a couple of buddies, and we traveled out, rotated houses every week. So, and I'd leave projects there. So I wasn't moving projects usually, but I knew what tools I needed. And I actually put my palm tools in the little pockets around the perimeter of the rigging bag. Then I rolled my rolls up that I had the tools I needed for that week and drop them inside that rigger's bag, and it's got my strop and my pencils and my rulers and all my band-aids. And then I just got one bag that has everything, which I liked. Because when I did transport projects, that gave me another hand to carry whatever I was working on. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I'm not sure they still do sell rigger bags. So these are, but this is a lighter weight version. The ones I bought are very heavy, right?
It's really nice canvas,
Yeah.
heavy canvas.
Yeah.
That came from Blues Trading back in the 90s. Then they quit carrying it. So I had a friend start carving about 5 years ago.
As I understand, riggers are the people that climb steel scaffolding when they're putting rivets and things together, building buildings. And they needed a really sturdy bag because once you're up there, there's no ladder or elevator to take you down. You're going to take everything up at the same time. So I thought,
Bag if you
okay. Thank you, Joe. Jim Spitzer. Jim, I don't know if are you here, Jim?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Jim claims he's not a carver, but he does a lot of carving. He slipped up. This is the issue of how do you park your tools to make them accessible? And Jim showed this picture about 2 years ago that he built a pedestal on top of his workbench to get everything up and away. And then he built a tray with some dividers in them so he could kind of reach and grab the tools. And that was his solution. And it just seems elegant to me. I wish that I keep wanting to make one of those and I haven't gotten around to it yet. So I keep grabbing plastic and getting on it, but someday I'll make one of those. Jim also travels. This is not a particularly good picture. At Adam McIsaac's 2-day class, he had a bucket. It's kind of I'm not sure, a bucket boss, kind of a canvas wrap around a 5-gallon bucket that stores it's got all kinds of pockets around the outside. And that's his miscellaneous things. And then the tool roll on the other side, my left-hand side of this picture, then shows the other things he did. And Tom, Rich, I'm going to have you unmute and just talk about your similar solution, but a different solution.
Well, it's similar. My first class with Chuck Reinhardt was the first class that I took with for long-handled tools, and I bought a set from Master Carver, and they're pretty good. I mean, the tools are better than I am. They certainly were then, still are, I guess, now. And so they're round though, and they're not flat like Swiss Made. They have Swiss Made has flat edges. So I sanded flat the top and bottom of them, and then I also put the curvature and the length, the width of the blades, so you can see little labels on each one of them, so you know which one. I know which one it is, and they still rolled off the carving table. So I got a bamboo placemat from Pier 1, I think it was, but you can get them at World Market or places like that. And I got a needle and thread, and I sewed together 3 bamboo sticks. You can see at the top horizontally little sewing spots where I sewed together and humped up a little line, so that when I put the chisels down and the gouges down, they wouldn't roll. And one nice thing about that is I could put the chisels into a tool roll, and then I can roll up the placemat and stick it in there too, and it's all very portable. I currently have a stand that's very much like Jim Spitzer's, but it's just made out of scrap wood, and it holds that bamboo roll upright so I can, it's in front of, and in front of, and yeah, there. You can see the picture on the left. There's my bamboo roll, my chisels, my working space, and then also I have a clipboard with a picture of the original design of what I was going to be working on, and then my micro jig type holding device onto the table. It's like bench hook. A lot of people use bench hooks to hold the piece that they're working on. I use something that's routed both vertically and horizontally, and it's really great for holding your device in any position, or holding your piece that you're working on in any position.
Yeah, I'll commend that solution that Tom did. I think it's very clever. We did the newsletter ran a series of articles and photos on work holding devices and work holding options, from bench hooks to carving hooks to the clamp down kind of mechanisms. And those were over maybe 2 years ago, over about a 9-month period. Last month, I took all of those and extracted them and put it in a standalone PDF document, and it's on the website. And you'll see Tom Sipes' solution in a minute. I'm not sure about that, if Tom's made it in that one. But there's just a lot of interesting solutions for work holding. So tool storage is one topic, work holding is a whole nother one. And I think Tom's got a really good one there. I'm going to keep going here. Thank you, Tom. Julie. Julie says Julie says I need help. So Julie sent this in as a user example of her tool storage system. So what would you like to say, Julie?
I'm thankfully I'm here tonight. I've gotten a great many ideas about what I can do. One of the things that I do, though, that I think is successful is underneath all of that is a carpet out of my husband's truck. Brand new. We got new WeatherTech floor mats for his pickup truck, and he gave me those, and it's just the right size. And and I carve on top of it, nothing moves around, nothing falls on the floor. But clearly I don't have I haven't settled on a successful storage solution quite yet. I'm still working on that. And again, I told Larry, I thought this looks like one of those games we all used to play as a child. You look at a tray with a whole bunch of random things on it, throw a towel over it, and then write down what's on the tray and see how much you can remember. I mean, if I had to actually inventory my stuff from memory, it would be a challenge. So, but everything there on the bench is, as a result of a class I've taken, or somebody has said to me, gee, you're carving here, I've got my dad's old tools. How about if you have them now? So, just yesterday, I put all of the odds and ends in the Guild's roll up tote there, and I also travel with my carving belongings, and I decide what I want to take, and they go in the wooden box that's got shavings in the bottom of it, right there in the center of the screen, and I usually try to be pretty minimalistic when I travel. So everything, if it doesn't fit in that box, it doesn't get to go. So thank you, everybody, for all the great help I've gotten tonight over your storage solutions.
So the upper left kind of beigey tool roll, that looks like a well-used tool roll.
Yep, it was in the bottom of a box of tools that a man gave me that he had in his garage for easily 50 years. He said he'd never used them, and they were his wife's grandfather's tools, and I opened them up and they were a mess. They were rusty, they looked like people had opened up paint cans with them, or chiseled out screws out of things. I mean, they were, and I spent one whole winter in my spare time, cleaning them up, and then last year Larry showed me how to sharpen. So I've been still working on that. So, and a lot of those are in that the guild tool role right now. So
Okay. Thank you, Julie. So the big tool roll on the left is that Carhartt
mhm,
Guild of Oregon Woodworkers
yep.
volunteer-ish kind of thing, right? So that was, you put it to good use.
Yep. And actually anybody that wants them can go on the guild website and purchase them as well.
Can you? Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Julie. This is a picture I took at Adam McIsaac's studio during the carving workshop that he did a couple months ago. And there's two photos here. The one on the left is a magnet, and he stores his adzes against that magnet on the wall. So it's not quite obvious, but that's where those two adzes are parked against the magnet. And then I think most of his tools are stored on a bench. He uses knives, crooked knives a lot, so he's got a workbench that things are just laid out. These seem to be his odds and ends kind of tools. The bigger ones with the wider handles have slots at the top so they can be slipped in, and they look like they have a narrow opening and then a wider in the back. But the level on the bottom has got holes in them where he just drops the blade in. Where for the smaller size blades you can do that. Notice the lone palm tool that he's got. He got two. Okay. So that's Adam. This is Mary May's top of her head, but if you look beyond that, you'll notice magnets again. If you've ever watched her videos and seen her studio, she's got massive amounts of tools. This is where she's storing things on the back wall. And she said that's worked really well for her. She can visually see them really quickly and pull them off. And what she does, this, yeah. Yeah. So when we think about the big one in Oregon, do we worry about things falling off and being nearby? I'm not going to worry about that one, but it's one of these little factors. This is the tool library of the Oregon Carvers Guild. That is a baker's rack that I picked up on Craigslist about 10 years ago. Each of those slots is the room for a metal tray for baked bread or cookies or donuts or whatever they are. It's on wheels, and it's not designed to hold the weight of, it racks quite a bit. So I put some support on it. I put some plywood things in there. So you notice kind of in the middle, all the tool rolls that I showed you are just kind of stored there. That's where they're parked. On the left-hand side, near the top, you'll see about 6 or 8 of the little pencil boxes that I showed you. So that's where those are stored. There's a tie-dyed Ruth Warbington memorial tool roll sticking out at the end. And then at the very top, I standardized on these what are called Sterilite shoebox size boxes. I go crazy about all these projects stored in different size boxes. So all over my shop, I've got these things, and I can stack them up, and I can take bookcases and I can stack them up, and it all works. All of these are on wheels. I can roll this thing around and get it out of the way. So it's quite a compact system. And it's just yet one more example of using vertical space to handle some of the stuff, so I can pull out what I need. And we're going to finish with Mr. Tom. So Tom Sipe is our newsletter editor, is on our board. So Tom, I have three, let's see, I got three of your slides kind of organized this way. And I didn't do the overall shot, but you can kind of start maybe with your workbench setup. And then you can look at the drawers a little bit later.
Okay, I built this standalone workstation out of basically an IKEA countertop and 1/2-inch plywood and 2x4s. And basically, and then a little bit of 3/4 inch for the shelves, 3/4 inch plywood. Essentially, what I'm set up for is being able to take classes and hopefully someday give classes. So I've got a big screen in the back, the computer off to the side. One of the things that I find that's, once again, I've used magnets across the back, and you see the knives across on the lower left side. Very important in terms of doing relief carving, which I like to do, is the lights. They came from IKEA. By the way, can't really see the magnets too well on the top, but they're also from IKEA, quite strong and quite capable. I think the house will come down before any the chisels come loose. I use a rotary tool occasionally, so that's up there. And normally I will hang that off to the side and see what else is of interest there. Oh, the camera that I had made, that's articulated thing is a camera, which actually will demonstrate because I've got a shot of tool holder. Go ahead, next.
And
So,
can you explain again what's in the PVC rolls at the top?
oh, okay. Those, I don't have much in the way of wood burning equipment, but those are the 6 wood burning pencils that I have. So that's a wood burning set that's a kind of chrome, and then the 2-inch PVCs. Each one of them has a rolled up cord with the pencil.
And then Tom has got several drawers. I didn't do them all. This is the one drawer. You had about 6 drawers underneath that desk workbench area. This is your solution for palm and knives. Is that right?
Yes, basically, I'm a little more free format. This is probably uncharacteristically organized for me, but essentially, getting things in slots isn't something that I normally think about while I'm working. So the magnets work out real well. This is a good showing of the IKEA magnets. As I say, they work really well. They're a little bit dead right at the end, but other than that, they're completely live. And those are full extension drawers. They go about 4 feet. And this is the hold down system that I use. Basically, it's an array of 1/4 inch holes that have some T-nuts on the back of them. So I can take and use these are nylon things that I did CNC hold downs. If you look at the one on the left in the middle, you can see a little circle below it. That's to regularize how tall the hold down is for something which is 1.5 inches, which is what this carving is. I've got that cranked up such that the piece of plastic is level. If it was a more shallow, I'd bring that bottom thing. It also has a T-nut and I'd screw it down. It's got across the front, you can just barely see on the lower right-hand side, there is a kind of silver button there. That is a clamp that is normally used for a table saw for a sacrificial fence. I use that to clamp this entire array down to a bench so that it's very stable. Also on the back, you'll notice although there's 2 flats there, there's also a right angle. So I could turn this actually 45 degrees instead of just 90 at a time.
Great.
And I could show you, if you'd like to see it, I can show you the thing that I use for,
Let me just change spotlights a minute, Tom.
yeah. Once again, it's a variation on the theme. With it's a magnet. Actually, this one came from Harbor Freight, and it's got a. This is actually removable. And so what I do is I try to limit myself to no more than a dozen chisels for any particular project, and I roll them out. I put them out here. Otherwise, I store them in the roll.
Okay, I'm gonna go home and build one.
Easy to do.
Folks, that is, if I go, that is the end of the slides. So that is the end of the collection of what we know. And I'm sure if we ask everybody in the audience to show us what they've got, you will get even more ideas that you realize some of them are elegant, some of them are practical, some are just get done, right? So some of them are plastic bags and cloth bags and totes of whatever kind. Roger, okay, hang on, Roger, just a minute. Thank you. There you go, Roger. So this is your it's micro tools, it looks like.
Yes, as part of one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Yeah, this is part of my one of my tool collections that I get at Portland Art on Burnside. Anyway, the micro tools here and some other ones on the other side. The whole thing just folds apart. So there are 4 sections that I can put tools on. And there's the
Go back, put it back toward your face a little bit. It gets a little dark. Go back further away from the camera a little bit. Unfortunately, it's still in.
anyway, they come in different types of holders. You can
Roger,
basically this one is designed for colored pencils, but the micro tools work just fine in there.
And where do you buy those?
Columbia Art on
Columbia Art.
Burnside on the east side of the river.
So Roger, you're also a traveling carver, right? You carve
Yes.
in Milwaukee
Yes,
Center, and you
and over in Vancouver, the Kingsway Carvers.
so you're at least twice a week you're on the road. You're
Yes.
carving
Yes.
a lot.
Two days.
You're designed for portability.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And like I said, these rolls come in different shapes and sizes. So I've got another one here that folds up. I don't know if you can see it or not. Not. Yeah.
That's going to be too
But
dark.
this one is set up for paint, tubes of paint. But I can get my tools from Drake in there, the palm tools in there, and it's full, like I say, folds out so it holds 3 sections of tools.
Yeah.
See what it looks like folded out.
Nice.
And then it folds up flat
It has a handle.
like there, and yeah, some closures on here, but it just folds up for storage and protects the tips and that, and while I'm traveling.
Okay. Thank you, Roger.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jenny, you asked a question 20 minutes ago about what are the dowels you were referring to, and I'm not sure what that was related to. Was that?
I can't remember who was speaking, but he had his chisels up on the wall with magnets on a pegboard system, and he talked about dowels. And he had trays under him.
Oh, that was Joe Lyon. So he uses a pegboard wall. And what he said is that the little ledges on the bottom were stuck into the pegboard using dowels. So that's how he mounted it into the holes. Is it every hole or just a few? Do you remember? probably three across. So just enough to hold the weight of the chisels coming down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, folks, it's bewitching hour, but I don't want to, what would you like to share? Your own experience? Have you ever seen solutions in your own clubs, in your other carvers that have done this? You know, John Wheeler's a massive carver. He does camping carving. So John, you probably, I'm not sure I want to put you on the spot, but that would be, I'm just trying to be invitational to anybody here that would like to share what their own experience is, what they found to really work for them. And what works for you might not work for anybody else, but you might be surprised. Okay. We're going to say adios, good night. We'll wrap it up. Thank you all for participating, for being here. I think it's an incredibly interesting topic, and I think we probably scratched the surface reasonably well, but there's even more. I made a note to myself that I forgot to put in Chuck Reinhardt's tool cabinet. Chuck is a master woodworker and a master carver, and he built his most elegant carving tool chest that he made with out of varieties of kinds of wood. It's a more like a cube. I would say it's probably about 16 inches cubic. It's bigger than 12 by 12, and it's heavy by the time you put all the wood and metal inside. So he's got big brass handles that he will be able to carry that thing. And it's a piece of art, and it's a heavy object. So I didn't show that, but it would have been worth doing. As I said, I think we probably ought to talk about work holding options, because we haven't talked about carving screws or different kinds of carving hooks and various different kinds of hold downs. And I will send out a link to the compendium of other work holding devices that came out of the newsletter, including Tom Rich's, which is different than Tom Sipes, but it's got a lot to come into it, and there are different solutions. So thanks for joining. I hope you can keep up. Come back next month for Mary May. And if you've got an email on the survey for Mary May, please fill it out. We need your input, because the better job we do on planning, the better off we're going to be for having better classes. So that's it. We'll pull the plug, stop recording, and see you next time.
Thank you,
Thank
Larry.
you.